Well, the Kansas City Chiefs are talking about Kadarius Toney as their number one weapon on the offense. Okay, Bloom, that's got a lot of fantasy GMs wondering, can we trust it?
Yeah. Could we trust anybody last year? Well, last year there was no Kadarius Toney, and it does appear that the Chiefs have the Kadarius Toney fever that at various times have gripped the fantasy football world, and we understand why you want to be trawling, looking, fishing in that Chiefs pass offense because somebody has to be consistent for fantasy football other than Travis Kelce, right? Right? Well, maybe not. Patrick Mahomes has told us that, but Toney absolutely has the talent. We can picture that best case scenario if he can stay healthy, if he can stay focused. He has the talent to maximize that role, as they were talking about with Kansas City. Even be a vertical player. Can he outcompete? Remember, we've got Sky Moore, we've got Rashee Rice. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is also a vertical player. So I think we continue to wait. But for fantasy football, the answer is always based on what is it going to cost? Hey, if Kadarius Toney's an 8th, 9th, 10th round pick in your redraft league, you can get him for maybe a late second round pick in your dynasty league. It's worth the risk, but it is still very much a risk.
It is very much a risk, and one that makes fantasy GMs nervous because we've seen this before, and the talent is there. And hell, you mentioned the other guys. I'll throw in a lot of love for Rashee Rice. If he
Yeah,
emerges the top target this year. Now his film is really inconsistent from SMU, but if it clicks for him, then he could take
sure.
off. Sky Moore, I believe him at
Right.
Waldman favorite. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know we
Mhm.
spent plenty of time talking about him last year. Like, so you have other options. If Toney shows the slightest misstep, those other guys could take off.
And we saw last year too that it wasn't just that he was not giving the Giants his all. He got banged up immediately, just as he did with the Giants when he had that sensational game in his rookie year. So I think that this is going back to his draft profile. When he's on the field, you see why he's a first round pick. But the most important availability. And you see why maybe he shouldn't have been a first round pick.
Yeah, you see why the complications have been there with the Kadarius Toney, and I guess complications super quick on Chiefs news. Isaiah Pacheco had been
Yeah.
battling multiple injuries during the year and was still phenomenal, still led the team in rushing, still led the Super Bowl in rushing. Yeah, but he's gotten some surgeries. I believe that's plural, Bloom. You
Yeah.
can check out the Isaiah Pacheco news on our Footballguys newswire, but I was like, oh, he was hurt, I guess. All right. He was still awesome.
He was, but you're going to see him contend with Jerick McKinnon, who's back, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, with or without a fifth-year option. He can still contribute to this offense, and this really fits into the Toney take, where there is enough weapons in this offense. There's enough ways for Patrick Mahomes to take his talents on the field, turn it into production, turn it into wins, that it's going to be very inconvenient for fantasy football. And we'll talk about this when we get to our AFC West draft recap, that there may be even a new undrafted free agent running back to the mix, just a little further south, coming up to Kansas City. So what is a good problem for Kansas City, which is they have a lot of different players that can contribute in a lot of different ways to this offense, is something in fantasy football that is going to continue to be more difficult to decipher.
I think I'm making the birds upset because I think they were harassing me.
Just watch out for the Blue Jays. You know, Blue Jays can decapitate other birds.
Wow, we do have some beautiful blue birds, blue jays. Something they're blue. We
Mm-hmm.
got blues and reds and all the
Yeah.
wonderful colors of the rainbow. As we talk about fantasy football and just the NFL in general, more of our newsy stories are that Darnell Mooney should be ready for camp. Now Mooney there with Chicago, no longer having to worry about getting all the attention, of course, because DJ Moore is going to get that attention. The 2022 ankle injury that took him down in week 12, now he'll be back, and I believe he's one of those guys. It's flex appeal to be sure, but Windows Bloom,
Mm-hmm.
it's what we always say. If Justin Fields takes that next stride as a passer and DJ Moore gets enough attention as we all believe he will from coverage, well, that leaves Darnell Mooney with that speed. I said movie because he can move
Yeah.
down the field, and it'd be damn good for the Bears if he did.
Yeah, this was a player that was a potential breakout player last year, but Justin Fields just wasn't there as a passer yet. And we could debate how much progress Justin Fields showed as a passer, but there was some progress. Well, what really might help his progress, other than better offensive line play, is you bring in a DJ Moore. You have Chase Claypool more integrated into the offense, and the ability that he brings as a big target on the outside to win 50-50 balls, maybe giving Fields a little more confidence. Tyler Scott, certainly a player that can contribute, a player with speed, a playmaker. So there are a lot of pieces. Now, again, for fantasy football, what are we projecting per game, Cease, for pass attempts for Justin Fields? Is it going to be north of 25, maybe even 20? You know, this if the game plan is on track, and remember they drafted Rashawn Johnson, right? And they have Dante Foreman, and they have Khalil Herbert, so they have the guys, just cannonballs, cannon fodder. Just keep running these guys, and of course, a lot of plays that are called as pass plays may end up as Justin Fields runs. So I think it's going to be difficult week to week to predict, and it's a good problem again. Good problem, bad problem. Good problem for the Bears. A lot of speed at receiver, a lot of big play targets at receiver. Bad problem for fantasy football. You may only have 13, 15 completions in a given week, and it's going to be difficult to time that. But Darnell Mooney, I think, sees looking on the longer view, maybe on a second contract with another team, Darnell Mooney can still be a number one. We still haven't seen what Darnell Mooney's talent can translate to for fantasy football because, well, he's on the Bears.
Well, the design of this offense unlock that talent. That's what my head's thinking when we're talking about Justin Fields and you're, establishing what he needs to do, Bloom. For me, it's like those guys with the elite rushing ability, your Josh Allens, your Justin Fields, these type of players, like you got to run when everything's been exhausted, and then you can take off to run. I think there's too much of a natural, just kind of inclination, like, oh crap, one thing went wrong, I'm going to run because you can and because you can be successful. But at the end of the day, you've got to be successful with your arm first. So the question for me becomes not necessarily Mooney's talent. We know he's talented. We know he's fast. But it becomes how quickly can Justin Fields turn that part of his brain off and just be like, I know I have to stick with the play.
Yeah.
And the great thing about those guys is like if they do that, then it's magical because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you stop the guy? You can't. But
Right.
when they take off to run, you can make them see mud. The NFL term. You can make them see
Mm-hmm.
mud. You can make Josh Allen see mud quick. And then he just, I'm going to run. Like, okay, that's awesome. But it also limits you, especially if you get to the postseason.
I think Justin Fields, my main hesitation, watching him at Ohio State was when he would break the pocket, he did not look to attack as a passer.
Right.
He was much more comfortable attacking as a runner and a scrambler than as a passer. And you can see this in how they hold the ball, where their eyes are once they break the pocket. And I think that, like you said, Cease, Chicago can get by with a design of an offense that is a run first offense, play 11 on 11 football on defense because of Justin Fields' threat as a runner on designed runs, and then leverage that and play action, maybe move the pocket so that he can roll out. I think he is comfortable throwing on the move, but not comfortable throwing outside of structure on the move, at least not yet. So if you can create those chunk plays with these big play receivers downfield, grind away with the running game, keep Justin Fields viable as a runner so the defenses are on their heels and not on their toes, then, like you said, Cease, the missing piece is being able to make those throws outside of structure when the play breaks down with those talented receivers. Then you have an offense, and this is all on Luke Getsy, right? So what do we know about Luke Getsy as a play caller? What do we know about Luke Getsy as someone that can design an offense? Not much. We're going to find out because he has the guys to work with now, and I think that this is going to be for him a chance, for Justin Fields, a chance to show that they can elevate this offense, and they made the right choice when they traded out of the number one pick.
Well, I'm talking about Getsy. Is he more Justin Alton or is he more Nathaniel Hackett? There's a difference. And I made fun of Justin Alton all year. One, he never left the facility. He'd be like, I haven't started my car in 3 weeks. Hey, go home, dude. Go home. It wasn't
Yeah,
working. But that
nothing to be proud of, Russ.
exactly. That's when Hackett was ruining everything. But then Otten like got to go home, and ran the offense for 2 weeks, looked fantastic. Is it more Matt LaFleur? We'll say that. We just don't know with Getsy. And then how do you kind of spark that within Justin Fields? I think it's with great design. It's with those plays working that you mentioned, and then Fields going, "Oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that," and that becomes what he leans on rather than just his natural rushing ability.
Yeah, and what's exciting about it, Cease, is that I'm a Lions fan. You know that, adopted Lions fan. But this division's up for grabs. It's not outlandish to picture the Bears winning this division if Fields not even can take that step as a passer outside of structure, but just a passer within structure, and this offense can leverage all these great talents. And remember, they got Darnell Wright at the number 10 pick, a plug-and-play right tackle starter.
Yep.
So that's going to help their cause a lot.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. All that talent, Bloom. I don't want Justin Fields to start to get the blame of why things didn't work in Chicago. Like, make it work for him.
Yeah.
You've got the talent. You've got the young passer. My God, Chicago, you guys are lined up. If you can hit it, you can hit it big. What the hell is Tennessee doing? The latest report from Footballguys.com Newswire is about, when, and I believe it was Peter King, totally not Monday morning quarterback. His article on Mondays, that's totally not Monday morning quarterback. Football night in America on Mondays, or whatever the hell it's called. And I love Peter King. I just make fun of his article because it's totally not Monday morning quarterback. But anyway, he's like, they'll turn over to Will Levis as soon as they, like, what are they really going to try to trot out the Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry formula again? I thought this year might just be a rebuild year. Honestly, I'm surprised Tannehill's still there, but the news from Peter King is like, oh, hey, Will Levis might take over. Yeah? Why isn't that week 1?
Well, maybe is Will Levis ready? And see, this is tough. I think that, like you said, what is Tennessee doing? Because this question hinges on a team's ability to self-scout, a team's ability to understand where they are. And the reality is, Will Levis, I like to call it imprinting, right? How many quarterbacks have we seen ruined because they're thrown into a hopeless situation?
Right.
And because they're thrown into a hopeless situation, they develop bad habits. Look at Will Levis between 2021 and 2022. And even if you say reasons, not excuses, his offensive line was bad. The offensive play designs, the offense was bad. They needed Liam Cohen. He developed bad habits. And if you put him in this 2023 Titans offense, who's the number 1 receiver? Who's the receiver that defenses are going to be afraid of? Chiggy Okonkwo? I don't know. I mean, where's your mismatch? Where's your leverage? Where's your layup in this offense? Even with Derrick Henry, have you looked at the offensive line? Have you looked at the depth chart? Okay. So whether it's September, October, November, if Will Levis has shown us that he's the kind of quarterback in a bad situation that will revert to bad habits, you are holding back his development. At the same time, the Tannehill Henry era is over. So I know people talking about Arizona having the top 2 picks because they have Houston's pick. You got to be worse than Tennessee, and that might be difficult this year.
That might be some trouble spots. And it's kind of funny as I'm saying, why not Will Levis week 1? I'm thinking about Will Levis, and I'm like, oh,
sure. Well, because you get the number 1 pick to, speaking of Arizona, and you take the quarterback next year that say, well, Will Levis didn't work. So I think that it all is encapsulated in the first thing you said. What is Tennessee thinking? What is the plan here? Because it doesn't seem to me like they have, as opposed to some of these other teams that have torn it down and rebuilt, like Chicago. I don't see any conceptual continuity in what they're doing.
Isn't it weird with Mike Vrabel? Wouldn't you assume just the opposite of that? Like, oh, they got a plan. They did their plan. Look at their plan. Their plan's awesome. And in the draft, we talked about it. We'll continue to talk about it. Like, what is their plan? And I like Grant Carthon. I love him. And Mike Vrabel's been fantastic. But, this seems very odd for the construct of that team.
Well, see, you got to ask, right? Is this one of those situations like John Gruden and Mike Mayock, or Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, where how much power does the GM have, really? It is more of an emperor king as head coach than someone who's part of a structure, say, like in Minnesota, where it's a group decision. everybody's working together. So you almost have to have organizational clarity. I think that it is still Mike Vrabel's team, and I'm just speculating, but that's what we do here on the Audible, right? I mean, isn't that what most football talk is, peeking through keyholes? Mike Vrabel has no back down in him, right?
None.
Mike Vrabel has no, okay, well, we're going to sacrifice the short term because we have to reposition and retrench ourselves. Retreat! There's no retreat in Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, none whatsoever. So again, it's just all right. What is the fit like with Tennessee? We are fixing to find out. You mentioned Minnesota there. We do have a news item about Kirk Cousins hoping to be there next year. Well, you can hope in one hand and do something else in the other hand, see which one fills up first. Sorry, Joe. But yeah, this is Cousins' swan song in Minnesota. I honestly, other than winning a Super Bowl, I can't see it going any other way.
Yeah. The question is, Minnesota was a team that certainly were doing their due diligence on this year's quarterbacks. They ended up with Jalen Hall. They were doing their due diligence. They certainly were open to the idea of taking that quarterback. It wasn't Will Levis, obviously, but taking that quarterback to pass the torch. Now, the good news is they did take Jordan Addison. They certainly have an offense by its structure, by its design, that de-emphasizes the quarterback. So you might be able to get by with an Andy Dalton type of talent or Kirk Cousins type of talent. But I think that Cousins probably can wring a few more $20+ million years out of this if the Vikings don't have a quarterback in place. I don't see the Vikings as a team that would go after a Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, that veteran quarterback. I think this is a team that's probably going in the other direction. Remember, again, there was a big changeover in regime with Kevin O'Connell, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. So we shrug our shoulders, and this is another one where we wait and we see. And yeah, if I'm Kirk Cousins, I think you're comfortable in Minnesota. You get to play indoors, even though it's very far north, and you've made a lot of money from this organization. And I don't think they're going to be able to find something better than Kirk Cousins for next year. So he's probably smart to be wishing for that because he has some leverage in this situation.
This is the danger of purgatory for quarterbacks because you can be good enough to make a playoff run, but not good enough to make a Super Bowl run. And are your fans okay with that? Can you get by with that? Can you spin that? Oh my God, the propaganda and spin in the NFL, Bloom, is off the chain,
Oh
as the big
yeah,
fella would say. So, like with Kirk Cousins, it's like, well, we can win enough to keep the fans at bay, but there's got to be the temptation of finding a young guy, finding your guy if you're Kevin O'Connell, and then building with that guy.
yeah, and I think the interesting proposition in this is if you are Kevin O'Connell, if you're coming from Sean McVay's offense, right? Uh, now I know Jared Goff was a number one overall pick. Isn't this a strange paradox, right? Because you look at what Jared Goff's doing in Detroit, and you say, well, he's the kind of quarterback that if you surround him with good offensive line, good weapons, and a good scheme, he can execute, right? This is maybe plan A for CJ Stroud, who was a number 2 overall pick, right? Surround him with good structure. This is what we're looking for in Desmond Ridder. Surround him with good structure and they can execute. So I think that maybe that makes it not a need to get a franchise quarterback, not a need to get a quarterback with plus tools. Kirk Cousins wasn't that guy. So again, we're going to learn about what Minnesota values in a quarterback. We're going to learn about Minnesota's future on offense. Certainly would have been interesting if Anthony Richardson was the quarterback that fell instead of Will Levis to see if they would have made a move for him. Maybe they're looking for athleticism at quarterback. These all remain questions without answers until the Vikings act.
Yeah, until they actually do something. But you did mention Matthew Stafford there, and as we talk about breakout players, breakout. I almost said make out players. That's a
That's
different
kind of
show.
the same.
Yeah, breakout.
Yeah,
Make out with your breakout. Am I right, fellas? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, breakout players include Van Jefferson. Maybe there's some players like we forget about. I'll say locally because it is a Broncos show, Bloom. Chris Allen's going to rush the passer for the Broncos this year. Chris Allen was from Alabama, undrafted last year, missed the whole season, totally forgot about
Right.
it. So, like, okay,
Yeah.
Van Jefferson, it's a different construct, obviously, but like Van Jefferson there, catching passes for Matthew Stafford, like, okay, well, what's that going to look like this year?
What's this offense going to look like this year?
Hey,
And I know they still have Matthew Stafford, But otherwise, this is a team. Obviously, the Allen Robinson deal didn't work out. You saw what happened to this offense without Cooper Kupp, and you cannot live on Cooper Kupp alone, right? This is a team that is punting the future. They're definitely rebuilding. Look at all the draft picks they had this year. That's how you know that it's getting serious for the Rams. They're actually keeping their draft picks.
Yes.
So, yeah, this is another team that it looks like they can be competitive, certainly on any given Sunday, especially within division teams that know each other. And hey, they're in a division with the Cardinals. But at the same time, this is a team, and this is that pump and dump, right? The Bucks, they're at that phase in their arc. The Rams are in that phase in the arc. Now, for fantasy football, you might be able to find somebody, and see, we're going to talk about when we get to the NFC West draft show. We're going to talk about Zach Evans, right? We're going to talk about players that, because the team's in a rebuilding phase, can get more opportunity. Van Jefferson certainly fits. And what Van Jefferson has going for him is he can play all of the wide receiver positions, or he at least has been cross-trained to play all the wide receiver positions. They have Tyler Higbee, but they don't really have another viable pass catcher in this offense. And it is a team that looks to be playing from behind a lot. This was a second round pick, just like Tutu Atwell. I think that Jefferson's probably the better bet to hit this year.
Let's go to Washington, talk about the Commanders. The breakout of Sam Howell and the team showing confidence. Now, it could be off-season spin or PR buzz or whatever, but in knowing some people around the building, Bloom, I'll let everyone do the math there. Sam Howell hype is legit.
Well, Howell is a player. Okay, Cease, let's go year N-1. So in 2021, where was Sam Howell projected as a draft quarterback?
Number 1 overall
in
pick.
2021. Yeah. So times change, things change, but it's there. And the other thing you have to like for Howell is you have Jahan Dotson, who is an ascending second-year wide receiver. By the way, Matt Harmon on the couch tomorrow. We're going to talk second-year wide receivers, among other things. You have Terry McLaurin, right? You have some tools here. You have a power running game that can take some pressure off of Sam Howell. So we're going to look at Sam Howell and Desmond Ridder in a similar light, where maybe as a fan of the team, maybe as somebody analyzing the team, you think, well, they're going to have to replace this guy. They're going to have to do better. But at the same time, you have a rookie contract quarterback. You have some structure around that quarterback if they can be competent. And I guess the other side of this is going to be just how bad was Carson Wentz? Just how bad was Taylor Heineke? Hey, we love Taylor Heineke as far as his moxie. Right. He's a gamer. But there might be some more meat on the bone for this offense if they even just get competent quarterback play, which has been very difficult for them to find.
It's been elusive, that's for sure. And then there comes Eric Bieniemy. He has something to prove. So I think that's going to be something very interesting to watch and to monitor. But you have a quarterback that fell with talent that has something to prove. You have an OC who could never get a head coaching gig that has something to prove. All those weapons, say whatever you want about Sam Howell, this limitation. It's like my take on Desmond Ridder. Like Desmond Ridder's got it all, and he's got more physical tools than Sam Howell. But look at the talent around him. And look at the talent around Howell, couple that with Bieniemy trying to stick it to the league. Could be some breakouts there.
And see, it bears repeating, because I remember when Bieniemy took this job in Washington, a lot of people said, why would he do that? That's a lateral move. Right. He should be holding out for a head coaching job. It's because he gets out of Andy Reid's shadow. It's because he gets to be the architect of the offense. He gets to be the play caller. And again, the weapons, Curtis Samuel, who bounced back last year. De'Ami Brown, who at least can add an element, a discrete element of a deep ball, frisbee catching dog. Just run out there and go get it. And you have Antonio Gibson. Let's see if they can do something a little more with Antonio Gibson as a weapon. Again, as that positionless football, maybe he's not going to overtake Brian Robinson as the power back. And now they have Chris Rodriguez, so they have another power back. That's okay, because maybe that frees up Antonio Gibson to be more of a mismatch player, a player with manufactured touches. So yeah, Eric Bieniemy has a lot to work with here, and certainly rooting for him to make a lot of teams that passed over him as a head coach candidate look foolish.
It is the Audible, Cecil, Lammey, Sigmund, Bloom, going over some news and notes, talking about some breakout players potentially in the National Football League. Not a breakout player because he broke out last year, but it's Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy who is going to start throwing in June. Bloom, when I read that story and commented on it on our footballguys.com newswire, I was like, oh, that seems like it's rushed.
A little
Is
bit.
Purdy going to miss the whole season? Is he going to miss half the season? This Purdy situation is one to monitor. Obviously, the 49ers are going to be all over it. And, well, I wouldn't be surprised if Sam Darnold starts a handful of games for this team as they wait on Purdy. But throwing in June seems a little fast.
It does. We need Dr. Gene, right?
Yes.
We don't have a lot of cases to compare this to, right? I mean, he didn't have to have Tommy John surgery, but is that necessarily a good thing, right? Only in hindsight can these things be clear, because sometimes we'll have players eschew surgery or the more serious surgery, count on rest, right? Count on rehab to get over an injury. But there is no more important part of your body if you're a quarterback than your arm, your elbow, and your shoulder. And would it make more sense? We'll see. This is certainly a situation where whatever the 49ers say, let's see when Purdy is back on the practice field. And even when Purdy is back on the practice field, let's see how he looks throwing the ball. And if you read the moves, actions speak louder than words, right, Cecil?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they didn't trade Trey Lance. Now, we're not privy to the conversations. We're not privy to whether a team called and said, we'll give you a first-round plus for Trey Lance. And they said, no, we want 2 first-rounders back because we spent 3 on him. Or if maybe nobody wanted to spend more than a third-round pick on Trey Lance, but the Niners were willing. But they bring in Sam Darnold. Cecil, you were the first one to report that they had a lot of interest in Sam Darnold. They probably think Matt Mayoko. And Matt Mayoko is not a beat writer we take lightly. He's in that pantheon of beat writers who've been covering a team for so long. He said that as a talent throwing the ball, Sam Darnold's the best quarterback the 49ers has had. As a talent, okay? Joe Montana fans out there.
And think
We're
of what
just talking
Kyle
about
wanted to do. Sorry to interrupt, Bloom, but think back to my report, which was shot down by whatever that one guy's name is. I don't know. And then Pat McAfee had my tweet on his show. He's like, he seems like a nice guy. I am a nice guy, Pat.
You are a nice
I know
guy.
that they wanted to trade their first rounder to the Jets for Sam Darnold. And instead, when the Jets wanted to see Zach Wilson's pro day to look at his elbow or to see what that's like, they waited. The 49ers traded. They move up so they can get Trey Lance. But think about that. Kyle with the most talented passer that he's ever had. Now, can you fix him after he's been messed up? That's the question mark.
Yeah, and it's a good question for them to answer in that organization at the price, the very cheap price they paid. But if we're going to get past all the lip service, if we're going to get past all the speculation, when you have Trey Lance and you don't trade him and you bring in Sam Darnold, who is a plus backup, then you're at least open to the possibility that your starter, and Brock Purdy is the starter, is not going to be ready for week 1. And so I just think that this is a very fluid situation and one that we need to be more in a wait and see attitude than I know what's going to happen. Just wait, you'll see.
Light and sweet, baby. Light and sweet.
Yeah.
And as the sun emerges in beautiful Colorado, as I sit on a mountaintop, Bloom, I just want to know one thing. How is Jazz Fest?
Uh-huh. Oh, man. Jazz Fest is always great. You know, I could get into social commentary about Jazz Fest brought to you by Shell. Yeah. There was one point.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
No. Seriously?
Yeah.
It was brought to you by Shell?
Oh, see, we're going to turn this into one of those shows.
Okay.
That's one of our other shows.
Okay.
I think there was even a point when there was somebody up from Shell up on stage telling us nobody is more committed to the environment than Shell.
Oh, my God.
I don't know why that's the first thing that came into my mind, but Jazz Fest is amazing. It's still about the music. 80% of the acts are New Orleans acts. We love them. We've hit a critical mass of just knowing the New Orleans music scene and out participating in it. As my stepson Noah was performing with the Young Guardians of the Flame, that was a joy. And there's so much culture. There's so much great food. There's so much music. I'm 47 years old. Look, this is the speed you're at. Jazz Fest is the music festival for those of us that are getting closer to grandparent age. So it's always good. It's crowded. It was rainy. And I think probably the highlight, Cease, was got to see what's left of the Grateful Dead. They call them Dead and Company. And as part of the drum section of the show, they had the North Side Skull and Bones Gang. The North Side Skull and Bone Gang is over 200 years old. It's here in my neighborhood in the Tremie. They go around on Mardi Gras morning and knock on people's doors and wake them up when it's still dark outside to remind them. I think the North Side Skull and Bones Gang cry is their chant is something along the lines of like, the next time you see me, there won't be time to cry. You better get it together. You better get your life together. So just a reminder, I thought that was really perfect and on point and wove in something from our neighborhood, something from New Orleans culture, something that goes back honestly to Africa. And that's one of the other things that you'll get at Jazz Fest. You'll get Native American culture, you'll get African culture, African American culture. There was a Puerto Rican tent that was about all Puerto Rican music and culture. And of course, some of the good old New Orleans acts. It was everyone's sad when Jazz Fest is over, but don't be sad that it's over. Be happy that it happened.
And you always say, if you will it, it is no dream. Bloom, I've got a
Yeah.
saying for you now. Where words fail, music speaks.
Music is the language of the soul. Music is definitely something that, think about it. You can listen to a song in a foreign language and not understand what the lyrics mean, but still receive the song and maybe have your mood changed. I was just telling you the other day, music is like weather for your mind. It's like weather for you can change the weather in your head. With music. Music is special. Music is truly one of the great gifts that we have. And see, if you and I weren't going to do a show on football, well, it might be about celebrity gossip, but it would probably be about music.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's fantastic. Fantastic as always. He is Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I'm at Cecil Lammey. The show is at the Audible. We certainly appreciate each and every one of you. Hey, audio only shows, they're a thing here. You watch our YouTube channel, you do the YouTube things, like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. And Jazz Fest, sponsored by Shell, a free speech crowd, could be brought to you by YouTube. Anyway, Bloom, that's my commentary. All right, do those things, but also remember we have audio only shows. We're going through the 8 parts. 4 of them have already been released. 8-part series recapping the NFL draft for each team in each division. We got a show for each division that's going on right now. So hit up your Spotify, your Apple Music, however you enjoy your podcast. And make sure to listen to the podcast. Listen to the Audible. You can watch us here on YouTube. You can listen to us how you enjoy your podcast. And we certainly appreciate you. Matt Harmon on the couch is going to be awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and I got to say, by the way, the guy who runs the kids tent, Seamus, who I've now got to hang out with 2 years in a row, big Audible fan. Huge Audible fan.
Shout out Seamus.
Came up to me great. And from Pittsburgh, too. And we had a good time hanging out at Jazz Fest. And I hope that becomes a tradition.
Hey, you Yinzers are everywhere, man.
We really are.
All right. He's Sigmund. I'm Cecil. We're the Audible. Until next time, be safe, be kind. Know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned. And as always, please, would you stay frosty?